General MacArthur one time said, "On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other days and other fields will bear the fruits of victory."
Rodeo. For the men and women of the United States Air Force, rodeo is a training ground, an international competition of military skills and dexterity. For a solid week, 75 teams from 9 nations will test each other and themselves. They will perform all the tasks that, in wartime, they would have to perform on fields less friendly. Among the competitors is the 437th Air Wing from Charleston, South Carolina. Already the survivors of rigorous preliminary competition. The team from the 437th flies the Boeing C-17 Globemaster III, the world's most advanced air transport. The competition is fierce, the judging rigorous. For the 437th, it's almost personal. Charleston Air Force Base has flown the C-17 longer than any other. But in the only other C-17 rodeo, they were bested by Altus, Oklahoma's 97th Air Mobility Wing. The memory of the defeat lingers, a motivation to improve the unit's performance and prove that the 437th is the best C-17 wing in the world. Charleston Air Force Base has been in the air transport business for a long time. The 437th Airlift Wing and its predecessor have a storied history dating back almost to the beginning of air transport. In the 1950s, Charleston Heavies evacuated refugees from Hungary during the communist takeover and hauled nuclear weapons at the height of the Cold War. In the 1960s, they delivered reinforcements to Guantanamo Bay during the Cuban Missile Crisis and airlifted supplies to the Congo and Vietnam. More recently, the 437th has been out on the front lines whenever and wherever there's been an air mobility need, from Rwanda to Bosnia, Panama to Kuwait. In times of peace, the Air Mobility Command cannot afford to rest. Theirs is a game of readiness, of being able to operate at peak efficiency on short notice. Today, Charleston Air Force Base sends some of its personnel off to test that readiness in a competition known as Rodeo. They will be judged on how well they perform the extraordinary tasks that are routine air mobility operations.
So just for your heads up, we're going to be leading this whole deal now. The 141 is going to be behind us.
Roger that, sir. Check completed.
Senior Airman Michael McGuire. Senior Airman Christopher Welton.
While the 437th Rodeo team spans all aspects of airlift, the heart of the team is a 3-man air crew.
Captain Garen Tenshirt.
That crew is under the command of Captain Garen Tenshirt. Only part of his job is flying the airplane. Ultimately, he's responsible for ensuring that the air crew functions as a unit.
Basically, that entails keeping the crew together, making sure that we're, and I really don't have to work hard at this, but keeping everybody doing their jobs correctly. These guys are keeping me, make sure I do my job correctly half the time.
Captain James Potsoff.
Potsoff is the co-pilot. Himself an aircraft commander and C-17 instructor, he's been flying the plane in Charleston since 1993.
Staff Sergeant Chris
Dockery is the crew's loadmaster. He's responsible for making sure that everything happens according to plan in the cargo area of the plane.
Basically, my job is the other third of the team to function in the back end of the aircraft, to supervise the drops, and to rig everything up and to make sure it goes out the back end okay. If for some reason it doesn't release automatically, then I'll actuate the backups and hit the targets.
The 1980s were pretty good years for Charleston. At almost every rodeo, the whole decade, the Charleston team brought home a victory.
But the 90s haven't been so good. Only one rodeo trophy has come home to Charleston. For the next week, the 437th mission will be to return Charleston to rodeo glory.
Check completed.
Roger, before taxi, check completed. We're taxiing.
Our ultimate goal for next week is obviously win the competition for the C-17 in our division.
In less than 24 hours, the competition will begin.
52 is clear for takeoff.
With good wishes and high hopes, the team from the 437th leaves Charleston for their jumping off point at Whidbey Island Naval Air Station in Washington State. From there, they'll move to McChord Air Force Base, site of Rodeo. Flying to Whidbey Island Naval Air Station today makes their flight into McChord tomorrow shorter and gives them a better shot of landing on time. They are focused. They have practiced more than 2 months for the coming week and are ready to take victory back to Charleston. After a 6-hour flight, the 437th touches down at Whidbey Island, Washington. Normally, the pilots and crew would enjoy some downtime after flying transcontinental, but this is rodeo. Less than 12 hours until one of the biggest military skill competitions in the world. Far from relaxing, 10 Shirt and Potsoff will spend the night sweating the small stuff, planning their flight into McChord Air Force Base.
They give us a point about probably 15 miles out called McKen that they give us an arrival time plus or minus a minute there, and then another arrival time to actually wheels touch down at McChord. And we're trying to shack it to the second.
So precise are 10 Shirt and Potsoff in their preparation that they have 2 fully developed flight plans. The weather will dictate their approach.
It's actually not going to be that great. It's 200-foot ceilings. The visibility will be 5 miles with fog. So we'll see how it goes. We'll be able to take off, but this weather's not that great. That's right on. Okay. 1540. I think this one was shown.
If they miss their landing time, they'll have to enter a holding pattern and wait until they can be worked into the landing sequence again. This could take minutes or hours.
Actually, the final approach fix right there. The trouble is if it's a light wind, SeaTac dictates which pattern's which. It could go either way. So.
And they will have points deducted for every second they are off their scheduled time of arrival. Precision is not incidental to the 437th mission. Arrival at the right place and time in war is a force multiplier, the margin at times between life and death. The C-17 was designed from the outset to be a precise player in the fast-moving warfare of the late 20th century. It is the result of a process that began in 1979. At the time, the U.S. Air Force relied on 3 planes: the C-130 Hercules, an aircraft that entered service in 1955, the C-141 Starlifter, first deployed in 1964, and the C-5 Galaxy, a behemoth which has been flying since 1970. Each of these had its own strengths. The C-130 could land on short and rough runways. The C-141 could go long distances, and the C-5 could carry exceptionally large and heavy loads. The Defense Department decided that it needed a new aircraft that would combine the strengths of all 3. Designers at McDonnell Douglas, the original builder of the aircraft, submitted the winning proposal for the new cargo plane. They did it by designing a plane from the inside out. They measured and weighed the new generation of weapons about to be deployed and tailored the C-17 to them. Their proposed transport would be tall enough to carry an Apache helicopter with its rotor hub installed and strong enough to withstand the weight of an M1 tank. Around that box, they proposed to build a jet aircraft that could take off and land on short runways and fly at nearly 3/4 the speed of sound. Not surprisingly, in its infancy, the C-17 was something of a problem child.
We know now that the C-17 program is technically flawed.
It went quickly over budget.
We know now that its financing system is flawed. We know that costs are out of control and probably escalating.
Production fell behind schedule, too.
We suspect that efficiency is deteriorating.
Congress was not pleased. In 1993, less than 1 year after C-17 production began, the Department of Defense handed McDonnell Douglas an ultimatum. Fix the problems by October 1995, or there will be no more C-17s. McDonnell Douglas formed integrated product teams with its suppliers and the Air Force pooling resources and worked together on ways to make the plane easier and less expensive to build. A program that had been an example of everything that can go wrong with the weapons procurement became a model of efficiency. Before the 2-year deadline passed, McDonnell Douglas was delivering C-17s ahead of schedule and under budget. Congress was mollified and authorized the construction of 120 aircraft. The plane the Air Force got for its trouble is remarkable, a plane that today wears the Boeing name following a corporate merger. Although it can carry 8 tons, the C-17 is a relatively small cargo plane. 8 can be loaded in a space which can accommodate only 5 C-5s. And to squeeze into those parking spaces, the C-17 can do something no other transport plane can do. Fully loaded and carrying enough fuel to fly halfway across the United States, the C-17 can back up. That power comes from 4 Pratt & Whitney engines, each one of which exerts more than 40,000 pounds of thrust. When designing the C-17, engineers actually bent the last 9 feet of the wing up. This accomplished 2 things. First, it saved valuable space on the tarmac. Second, these vertical winglets block wingtip vortices, or airflow, which curls back onto the top of the wings, slowing the plane. Stopping that flow reduces drag and increases lift and airspeed. But the C-17's most remarkable in-flight ability isn't how well it cruises. It is instead its ability to descend. The pilot can put the engine into thrust reverse and deploy air brakes in flight, reducing the forward thrust to 0. The result is called a tactical descent, 100 tons of aircraft in cargo, falling as much as 20,000 feet per minute. Crew members will tell you, it's a hell of a ride.
If you know it's coming, it's not bad. If we don't tell you, then it's quite a ride. You'll have big eyes by the time we get done.
Tactical descent is no air show stunt. In a war zone, flying into isolated bases surrounded by enemy guns, the steep drop means less exposure to anti-aircraft fire. That's good, but only if the plane can land safely.
You can see we've extended the flaps to full, and this is our configuration. We're going to land in a 3,000-foot strip. We're shooting it for that 400-foot zone that the competition is for today or for the next couple days and what we normally train to. For this airplane, that's a lot of flap to put down, and you can see the silver panels. If you were standing in front of the engine, you can actually see when they designed the airplane, they took the thrust and actually had the thrust hit the back of the flap.
That feature, called power lift, reduces the airspeed at which the plane lands. A lower landing speed means that it takes less braking to stop the plane, which means a shorter landing roll. In fact, a C-17 can land on a 3,000-foot runway with a landing roll as short as that of a 4-seat Cessna trainer. And the gear is strong enough to handle the impact of a drop of 12.5 foot per second. All that strength and ability is controlled from a state-of-the-art cockpit. The C-17's flight deck has more in common with a fighter than it does with most transports. Pilots fly the plane with a joystick rather than a yoke.
Stick's nice because that's how we all learned to fly aircraft in the Cessna or the Tweeds and the T-38. So it's kind of going back to old habits with the stick and the throttles. However, if on the left seat, it's a left-handed stick, so it's a little bit different in that respect. I think it's one of the only aircraft with a left-handed stick. But it just feels more natural to actually fly with a stick rather than a big yoke. Especially during air refueling, it's a lot smaller movements that you have to make for air refueling rather than with a big yoke. You're always flying around and you're a lot more displacement of the hand. So the stick's really nice in that respect.
Flight controls in the C-17 are not physically attached to the joystick by cables or wires. Computer sensors analyze the movement of the stick and deflect the control surfaces accordingly.
Pretty maneuverable. It'll turn on a dime. It's nice. It's like flying a sports car.
A sports car that can carry more than 170,000 pounds. The combination of speed, maneuverability, and size demands vigilance. And so the pilot never has to take his eyes off the rapidly changing scene outside. The C-17 has a HUD, or heads-up display.
You've got this double pane glass which superimposes your altitude on the right, your airspeed on the left, your heading down below, any of your nav aids that's operating. We fly, like I said, a lot of low-level missions, a lot of airdrop, where you really need to be looking outside, picking up the drop zone while still monitoring all your instruments. So as a result, it's just really nice to be able to see all your data in front of you while you're still kind of looking outside and making sure everything's on target.
Both the stick and the HUD have been common in the fighter aircraft for a generation. Until the C-17, neither had been used in heavy aircraft. The C-17 also lets the pilot take advantage of the latest in computer technology.
You can program in your mission computer all phases of flight from takeoff to landing and hook it up to the autopilot, and it'll fly all your altitudes, your turns, all your waypoints, and what speeds you want it to fly also.
Current squawk 6637.
The mission computer works with the Global Positioning System, or GPS, to fly as precisely as within 6 yards of where the pilots want the plane to be. It's so accurate that it replaces a human navigator. The C-17 also protects itself with sensors that detect incoming missiles.
That's the indicator that tells us, hey, possibly something's been launched at us.
Once an aircraft senses the threat, it alerts the pilot so that they can take evasive action or launch diversionary flares. If the pilot fails to react, the plane will launch the flares on its own. All of this capability is managed by the smallest crew in the Air Mobility Command. The C-5 has a crew of 7, the C-17 only 3, a pilot and a co-pilot in the cockpit, 1 loadmaster in the cargo area. Designers of the C-17 did not forget about the loadmaster when building innovation. Airdrop operations from a C-17 are automated, controlled by the touch of a button.
For airdrop, the entire sequence is done without me having to get out of my seat. When everything works exactly as it's published, I never have to get up.
When it doesn't, the loadmaster has backup switches that allow him to manually deploy the load. Basic cargo hold configuration is still a manual task, but even here, one person can manage it. For example, a loadmaster can maneuver a 300-pound ramp tow for vehicle loading into place with little effort.
And I'll just show you the one on the end here. as I said, it weighs about, 300-400 pounds. And that's it.
A C-17 Loadmaster can reconfigure the entire cargo area from being flat for wheel cargo loading to being rollers for flat cargo in about 25 minutes.
On the roller conveyor assemblies, I can operate both of these from this one, from bending down one time. I can turn this one, and I can turn this one. So I'm able to do, to bend down once and to turn two assemblies. And that would save me, on other aircraft, they would have to turn this one, move up, turn the next one. So when I finish this one, then I move here. And so on and so forth.
In the field, this time saving means the C-17 can get in and out quickly. Less time in a dangerous place is no small thing.
You can depend on this airplane. I would rather fly this airplane in there than any other airplane. You can count on it when you're going in there that you're going to be able to get out.
As they fly into McCord Air Force Base, Tenshirt, Potsoff, and Dockery bring all the gadgetry of a C-17 to bear on a real-world problem. They count on the mission computer to time their arrival precisely. They verify their airspeed, altitude, and heading on the HUD while visually checking their position over the runway. PowerLift helps them touch down exactly when and where they want. But in this case, perfection gives them no edge. With arch rival Alta scoring a perfect landing right behind them, the 437th has simply managed to stay in the competition. The first day of rodeo competition is relatively relaxed for most. For many participants, it's a day of preparation. For the hosts at McCord, it's a chance to welcome their guests. As the flight crews enjoy the opening ceremonies, however, the maintenance crew remains tense. Their first test happens early in the obsessive inspections that measure their attention to detail. Second Lieutenant Jamie Vincent heads the 437th maintenance team. Under a bright Washington sky, he and his crew endure an hour of scrutiny as judges probe every square inch of the massive C-17. Time passes slowly for the anxious team members as they watch. They can only guess where the umpires will find fault.
I did pressurize the systems.
For 2.5 months, they have put in long hours and sacrificed time with their families to prepare for this single hour. Now all they can do is wait and wonder.
They didn't find anything in the gear, I'll bet you. Not a soul over there. Climbing on the tires and stuff.
This is just one of 2 formal inspections this team will undergo. The next will be a post-flight inspection. In the meantime, they wait. After what seems like much more than an hour, the umpires reach their final decision and call the maintenance crew together for debriefing.
The crew bunk step, you know that bar that comes across? That you step on, it's got one loose rivet in it.
The level of detail is mind-boggling.
They're pulled like they're supposed to be, but they're not documented or tagged or called.
No major discrepancies. In the real world, this would be good news. Today, these results are only good enough for last place. While the air crew is briefed on its first mission, the aerial port crew is already at work preparing the day's load. The C-17 is capable of dropping loads that weigh as much as 60,000 pounds. Today's drop is a mere 3,000 pounds, the equivalent of a family car, puny by air transport standards, but enough to judge the crew's proficiency. Captains Garen Tenshirt and Jim Potsoff will be judged on whether they depart on schedule and if they identify all of the visual checkpoints en route to the drop zone. They will be evaluated on how they will avoid simulated threats along the way and if they arrive at the drop zone on time. Once over the zone, Staff Sergeant Chris Dockery will ensure that the cargo is ready to go when Potsoff hits the switch to release it. And although it rarely happens, if anything malfunctions, he will be there to fix it. The stress weighs heavily on Ten-Shirt and Potsoff as they prepare to depart. They have synchronized their watches with Rodeo Command. As they take the active runway, the countdown begins. Every 10 minutes, a plane takes off on its appointed mission. Now they must wait.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The crew has programmed the drop coordinates into the mission computer. They are confident they can hit their mark, even with the distractions along the way, arrive on time. Yet there's always one factor that cannot be figured into any computation.
We get down to the ballistics, get pretty precise. However, we're always at the mercy of the winds when we're dropping stuff. We calculate it really very precisely, but as it goes out the back, it's all up to the winds.
Acknowledge co-pilot. Low master. Doors are cleared to open.
Technology has taken the guesswork out of all but the last step.
Maybe hold the speed there for a second.
Here, they are at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Stroke deployed.
Stroke okay.
10 seconds. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Clear.
Red light.
A little bit early on that one. It's all right.
With their aircraft turning for home and the cargo door closing, the loadmaster can only guess at how close they are to the mark. It is close. It's a drop that would have passed muster only a few years ago. In this competition, however, it's an abject failure. Because back at the drop zone, Altus is closer. For the 437th, another last place score. 20 minutes and a few hundred miles later, there's another test. It is the equivalent to landing a C-17 on a carrier deck, a 400-foot-long section of runway that Ten-Shirt and Potsoff must hit dead center.
It's just down past to the markers are for the glide slope. Just past her by a little bit.
Okay.
Landing this precisely is a difficult task for any aircraft this large, but it's exactly what a C-17 was designed to do. Ten-Shirt puts his C-17 barely in the box, a remarkable feat that earns him only second place.
First checkpoint. I just think you did.
It was just to the right? It's just a little right. You kind of broke right.
If you hadn't moved, we would have flown right up.
Yeah, I know.
And you came up with on my clock, it was 14:24 and 50-second TOT, which was 10 seconds short of the scheduled TOT. So there wasn't anything unusual in the drop sequence.
The only other thing is I don't know how you did this, Chris, but I put my restraint harness away, you put your restraint harness away, and then the restraint harness bag sat there. The restraint harness bag was loose equipment on landing. It wasn't underneath the strap, it was sitting next to all the bags tied out. So that's a negligible safety thing, and it's a 10-point deduction. Other than that, you guys did a good job.
One of the frustrations rodeo participants experience throughout the week is really never knowing where they stand. The scores aren't posted, at least not all of them, and not right away. While Ten-Shirt and his crew know they landed long, they still don't know how long, and they think their drop landed closer to the target than it did.
Pretty much what we expected. We hit all the turn points. We were 10 seconds early on the TOT, which is our worst TOT in about 2 months, but we'll shack it the next time. And we're not sure the drop score, it should be right on. and the landing was a little bit long in the box, but and that's something we'll fix tomorrow or the next day. Usually it's right on, so it's about what we expected, but not good enough for us, not what we wanted. So,
well, it's time to buckle down and to drive this thing home for the next 2 days. Today was day one jitters, and
exactly.
We're not making mistakes anymore.
Even if the 437th achieves perfection, their prospects aren't good. Unless Altus starts making mistakes, the 437th trophy case will remain empty. Each day at Rodeo is an attempt to mirror what happens in the real world. Today, the 437th aircrew is scheduled to make a personnel drop. But there are other aspects of air mobility being measured, including the job of securing and holding contested landing areas. The combat rifle test. It's not as glamorous as flying, but without the Security Forces team, Air Mobility Command could not do its job. And without a good score at the rifle range, the 437th does not stand a chance. Over the drop zone in eastern Washington, the aircrew prepares for its personnel drop. The C-17 is capable of transporting and delivering 102 paratroopers to the front lines. But today, they are asked to drop only one. Accuracy, again, is the criterion by which they will be scored. The paratrooper wears a round parachute to ensure that he doesn't help the aircrew hit the mark by steering his descent. For the 437th, that fact contributes to their struggle, as their jumper lands wide of the intended target. Their hope that their rivals from Altus will falter is not realized today. The trooper leaping for the 97th arrives rudely, but several feet closer to the mark. Back at the base, the judges again are scoring the landings of the returning aircraft. They run out onto the runway, feeling the tarmac to find the spot where the wheels first touched down. The telltale sign is heat from the friction of rubber hitting the asphalt. They hurry because planes are landing only minutes apart on different runways. Wheels down, the 437 settles back to Earth, and umpires race to check Tenshirt's accuracy. Once they determine the point of impact, they measure the distance of that spot from the center of the landing zone to determine the landing score, all before the next plane lands. Day 3 has been a mixed one for the 437. The Security Forces team found trouble at the rifle range, but Tenshirt shacked his short field landing and got the top score of the day. And Vincent's maintenance team rebounded from the last place in the pre-flight contest to handily win the post-flight competition. As the final day of competition begins, the aircrew can only guess where they are in the standings. They don't know their scores. They don't know Altus scores.
I don't know exactly. In fact, they're masking some of the scores. So we have a feeling we're right in the middle somewhere. So there's a lot of points to be had today, probably around the neighborhood of 5,000 points with the assault landing, the AR, the airdrop, and the low level. And the ERO right after we land, there's quite a bit of points still to be had. So we're hoping we can achieve at least all of the points. So
this is make it or break it.
Today's the day. Today's the day, and we're considered the underdogs, and today's the day it's going to happen. So
you guys ready?
We're ready. We're as ready as we'll ever be.
The uncertainty creates pressure. One last time they take the runway and wait.
Further warning, thunderstorms and local flying air in eastern Oregon. Advise you have information X-ray on initial contact.
Their mission again takes them away from the coastal rain and low ceilings and to the drop zone over the mountains. Their visibility is more favorable for low-level operations. Today, they'll make a container delivery system, or CDS drop. In the real world, CDS might be troop supplies, medicine, or any other small item that can be rigged to a wooden pallet. The C-17 can drop as many as 40 pallets, which can weigh anywhere between 600 and 2,400 pounds. Today, they will drop only one.
Runway 16 quiet, slow pass service. RD5 is out of service.
Again, their every move is scrutinized and scored. And today, their score is good. But is it good enough? The crew of the 437th doesn't just have to do a good job. They have to do it better than the crew from Oklahoma. And the team from Altus is leaving little margin for error. Before Tenshert and his crew head back to McCord for their final short field landing, they rendezvous with the KC-10 tanker. Aerial refueling is tricky and vitally important to the C-17's wartime mission. Flying at 285 knots, the two heavy aircraft come together in the sky and begin the process of transferring 10,000 pounds of fuel from tanker to the transport. They have 24 minutes to complete this task, no more, no less. It's a leisurely pace, as low stress as dropping a single paratrooper or lone cargo pallet. The C-17 is capable of receiving 8,000 pounds of fuel per minute. Speed, however, is not the issue at this rodeo. Precision is. Just as it has been in nearly every event, just as it is for the last short field landing Tenshert will make. Ceilings and visibility at McCord are low, and Tenshert must make a visual approach and landing carrying 5 tons of extra fuel. As he makes his final approach, rain and low clouds obscure his target. The outcome of the entire competition may ride on his ability to touch down on a precise point on a runway he can barely see. All the computers and impressive instrumentation can't help him. In the end, rodeo comes down to a very basic equation: a pilot and his plane. Their final task complete, the crew from the 437th feels good about today's performance. But is it good enough to take Altus?
We're right in there. We're competitive. We got a chance to take any or none. We don't know for sure because they mask all the scores, but we've got a good chance. So we're happy today. It was tough conditions. The whole day was real tough. In fact, right down to the landing, we're landing in the middle of the rainstorm there and trying to find the zone. We can't really even barely see it, but I think it was pretty close. And the AR went real well. We were deviating for thunderstorms the whole time and stayed on the boom the whole time. The low level was tough, the tough points to find today. And
you think you found them all?
I think we found every one of them, and I think we flew over just about every one except for maybe one. And we tried. We gave it a good gallon effort, but.
What did Chris say about the low? Did he have an idea?
They're happy with it. They're all over there right now, and they're real happy because they think they got a chance of winning that.
He thought the drop was inside of 30 feet. So.
Did he see it?
Yeah, we came off the drop zone, made the right turn, and you could see it was close to the smoke. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed, and we thought we did okay. Yeah.
All the questions will be answered tomorrow. Rodeo. For the past 5 days, these men and women have pitted their skills against those of their counterparts from around the world in order to ensure themselves even a chance to win at least one of the 80 trophies that are to be awarded. They have to perform to a higher standard than they face anywhere else. The 437th can win trophies in 4 categories: security forces, aerial port, maintenance, and aircrew. They can win Best C-17 Maintenance Team and Best C-17 Aircrew, Best C-17 Wing, and even Best Air Wing. Or they can win nothing. One after another, the individual event awards are counted off. The 437th watches, politely enduring the victories of others while awaiting their own moment of truth. The suspense finally ends. The 437th's maintenance team takes home the trophy for best C-17 post-flight inspection. Whatever else happens, the 437th will not be shut out. But there's more to come.
Best C-17 short field landing crew is headed by Major Sam Cox.
Captain Garen Tenshirt has earned the short field landing trophy for Charleston, having had the best score on 2 of his 3 landings. And the 437th Security Forces team wins the first Phoenix Raven Award based on written test scores. Lieutenant Jamie Vincent's maintenance crew, which came back from a disappointing first day, earns the coveted title of Best C-17 Maintenance Team. The 437th Aircrew isn't as fortunate. Once again, the C-17 training school, the 97th Air Mobility Wing at Altus, earns overall Best C-17 Aircrew and Best C-17 Air Wing. Still, with 3 trophies to show for this week in Washington, the 437th has returned to Charleston to its rodeo glory days.
This trophy says that we are the best C-17 short field landing crew, and we're the only crew here in the entire rodeo that actually put it right in the exact spot, 0-0. So that's quite an honor, you know, and we shacked it throughout, so we ended up with this trophy. It was a little disappointing overall. We felt like we were the better airdrop crew. We should have taken that trophy as well. We all know that, and they know as well, that we were the better airdrop crew, but some drops went, the drop scores went a little bit bad, and we didn't end up with that trophy, but we're not disappointed with the week at all. We had a great time. We had a great time working together as a crew. We had some great times, and we're happy we got a chance to do it. And it was good. It's good. We're real pleased with it, and we didn't walk away empty-handed.
It's tough to walk in there and see everyone else winning stuff, and knowing that, you know, maybe day one you start out and had a rough day and you got blown out of the water from there. But you know, obviously we won one of the 3 events, and we have nothing to be ashamed of. We had fun. We had a good time, and we did things safely. And I had 2 good guys to work with, along with the maintenance guys, so I had a good week.
Vincent is especially proud of his maintenance team's performance and of receiving the award for the best C-17 maintenance team.
I thought they performed great. I really felt like we were the underdogs coming into the competition. It really felt like the 315th maintenance team had the best shot at it, just because a lot of their guys were a lot more experienced than my guys were. But we got here and we kept our heads screwed on straight, and we did what we had to do, and we came out the winner, so I'm real proud of them.
But the 437th comes away from rodeo with more than trophies. Of having an aircraft that's flexibility allows it to do many things.
It can do so much more than any other airplane out here.
And of having learned valuable lessons.
Well, I learned that you can have good days and bad days, but if you keep trying, you're going to walk away with something. You can't just give up. And we had a bad day there right in the middle, and we all held together, and we stayed strong, and we ended up walking away. The 3rd day, we had an absolutely perfect ride, and it wasn't quite enough to win anything else, but we did walk away with something. We didn't give up, and we did well because of it. So.
On this field of friendly strife, the men of the 437th and their C-17 have done pitch battle with the toughest opposition of all. Their own limitations. If they have come away with nothing else, they still learn valuable lessons about themselves and their airplane. Lessons that may one day, in some other part of the world, save their lives.